I'm Vicky, Joint Chief Exec from Wiltshire Community Foundation. We're one of Wiltshire and Swindon's largest funders, providing grants and support to community groups and individuals throughout the county.
Hi, I'm James. I'm a partner at MHA Monahans. MHA is an association of accountancy firms across the country, and we work with lots and lots of charities and other not-for-profit organisations.
Hi James.
Hi Vicky.
Thanks for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about annual general meetings, or AGMs. What is an annual general meeting?
Okay, well, it's probably useful to sort of think about a normal commercial company. And in that context, an annual general meeting is a joining together of all the interested shareholders, and the directors would be there and they would sort of present information to the shareholders, talking about how the company has performed, and the shareholders would also have the opportunity to vote on important issues. Now, within the context of the not-for-profit sector, it's very rare to have shareholders. So it's really just the same sort of setup, but instead of shareholders, the meeting is actually convened for the charity's members.
Okay, so I think a lot of charities are clear on who their trustees are, but the membership's not quite so clear-cut. So who are a charity's members?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and it is quite confusing. Now, so very broadly speaking, in my experience, charities are kind of set up in a few ways. So what's quite a common scenario is actually the trustees and the members that are the same, and in that situation actually often you don't need to have an annual general meeting at all. However, some charities might have been set up in such a way that there was a few interested people who formed the charity and wanted to retain some element of control, and in that situation they would be the members, and very often they may well change over time. So again, there might be a very small number of members in that situation, and so again it's quite a sort of quiet and formal meeting. The final scenario is actually where the charity has got a very wide membership. So it might be that the charity really relies on people for funding or volunteering, and so they're sort of set up in this membership structure. Now, very often they'll call themselves things like membership organisations or associations or societies. Now, what we tend to find is that sometimes charities get a bit confused about who their members are. So, maybe at some point they've opened up their annual general meetings to the wider public, and then it can create a kind of confusion about who has voting rights.
Okay, so how can I check who the members are?
Okay, so I think the go-to document here is the charity's constitution. This will have details about who the members are, and I think it's a really good starting point. Now, if you are a charity where you've sort of got this very sort of wide open membership, like an association or a society, invariably things will have moved on since the constitution was set up, and in that situation there would be a register somewhere of all the members, but the constitution would refer to that and sort of point you in the direction to go and find that information.
Okay, so once we know who the members are, what's involved in holding an AGM?
Okay, so again, I think a good starting point is to go back to the Constitution, because that will set out the specific rules of holding the AGM. As I sort of said earlier, some charities have no requirements to hold an AGM, and that makes life really nice and easy. You shouldn't take that as read, and absolutely go back to your Constitution, and that will provide the information you're looking for. When you do look at the Constitution, there will also be rules about how you administer a general meeting. And again, those rules absolutely apply to an annual general meeting. They will generally include things like, the notice periods given to members before the meeting, what communications need to be made before a meeting and whether that can be electronic. It will describe what constitutes a quorum. So, what is the minimum amount of members you need to make the meeting legal, and also the percentage of present members needed to pass a motion.
Okay, so I hear often that accounts are signed off at an annual general meeting. Does this mean that people can't sign them off before that?
Right, people often get confused by this point. Now, trustees are generally responsible for approving and signing statutory accounts, and that can happen outside the AGM. The AGM is very much about presenting the accounts, the phrase that's used is that the accounts are laid before the members. So it's not that you're sort of making decisions about what should be in that document, it's more about presenting to the members exactly how the finances have been run, and to give the members the opportunity to quiz the trustees and ask questions and ask about the strategic direction.
Okay. During the COVID pandemic, lots of charities held their AGMs electronically. Is that something that can continue to happen now we're sort of out of lockdowns?
Absolutely. So I think charities may choose to continue conducting their meetings electronically. I think it's particularly relevant where there's a large membership which is spread over a large geographical area. Now, once again, I think the critical thing here is to check your governing document, and unless it prohibits it directly, it should be fine. Now, the guidance from the Charity Commission does say that the AGM has to be held in a way where people can be seen and heard. So in that context, video conferencing is absolutely fine, whereas maybe a telephone conference wouldn't quite, be sufficient. But again, I think the critical thing is here, look at your constitution and make sure you're not doing anything which is going against.
Okay, so what would a typical AGM agenda look like?
So I'd suggest something like this would be a good approach, a good starting point at least. So at the beginning of the meeting, you would have the normal apologies and for absence, and you'd also approve the minutes of the previous AGM. I then suggest something like a chair's report would be really useful, and generally the chair would talk about what's happened in the year, plans for the future, the wider strategy, targets and initiatives. Very often at this point, the secretary may well have a report, and the secretary's report is more about how the charity may be running things internally. So, significant changes in legal structure, or changes in directors or changes in auditors would be really good topics to pick up at that point. After that, there's very often a financial report, and if you have a treasurer, very often they will be the person who will present that, and they will normally talk about the financial health of the charity, present the statutory accounts or other financial information as appropriate. And then very often you may well have a section to elect trustees, election of auditor if appropriate, or any other motions that need to be held.
Okay, thanks very much. If I need to learn more about AGMs, where can I look?
We'll provide some guides at the end of this video with some links which might be useful.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your help today, James.
Thanks, Vicky.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Platform Project for helping us produce these videos, and also to MHA Monahans for all of their support.
And a massive thank you to the Wiltshire Community Foundation for their continuing support for the sector.
I'd like to say a massive thank you to Reuban and his team at the Platform Project for helping produce these videos. There'll be a link to some of Reuban's other work in the description box.